Welcome to tonight's Neurolive, and I'm going to be talking about active reaches tonight. So the active reach is, I'm going to say it's one of my favorite parts of the Neurocycle, but every single part of the Neurocycle is my favorite part. So this is just one of the favorite parts. But it's so powerful. It helps so much. You know, when you are stuck in those thoughts that are driving you crazy, that just keep you stuck, that you find yourself just constantly going back to, like you may be working and you work concentrating, and then you suddenly look up and you find your mind just going back to something that's been worrying you or that you're working through, or you find yourself slipping into maybe negative rumination where it's dragging you down and you're going round and around, and then you get back to work again, and then you get up and make some coffee or something and you find yourself going back to that again, and so on and so on. This is where an active reach is amazing, because an active reach will help anchor you in the day and keep you moving forward. Because we know that if we get stuck in ruminations in a negative sense, if we go round and round and round, we'll go down. But if we recognize the rumination, acknowledge the rumination, add an active reach to the rumination, we actually progress forward. Okay, so the active reach doesn't work on its own. It has to fit in the neurocycle. It's kind of like landing a plane before you've even taken off. You can't do that. So a lot of people do active reaches just naturally. For example, people will grab an affirmation and they'll make little cards, or they'll put it in their phone and they'll have reminders, or they'll have start the day and say 10 affirmations. And not that I am against affirmations, but if you just do that without doing them in the context of the neurocycle, they don't work as well. They're more like a band-aid on the solution. But you can't keep saying something over and over again and then think that that's going to actually convince you to change your mindset. In other words, change your brain. So yes, saying something over and over again is going to plant it, but you make such a little, small, tiny tree that doesn't actually grow. So affirmations do plant into your network, because if you say something over and over for 63 days, it's going to form into a network in your brain. But if you haven't contextualized it within the framework of the 5 steps of the neurocycle, then it doesn't actually grow big. It just becomes it kind of, here's a good example. You know how trees are connected with roots and branches and all that stuff? Think of those, there's certain types of plants where they grow, but it's like they stand, they're like reeds that sort of stand next to each other. So they don't have branches coming out of each other. So there's a lot of them next to each other. That's with an active reach. You could visualize that in your brain. If you do an active reach only and you don't do the other 4 steps of the neurocycle prior to that, it's just going to grow these separated little plants that don't really do anything. They're just stuck there. They just these little separated things that aren't growth and life like a tree is, and growing big and influencing you. So just to try and give you an analogy. Okay, so an active reach helps then to practice and apply what you've learned in the prior 4 steps. So as we know together, awareness, reflect, metacog, recheck. And then out of those 4 steps, you will create the active reach that you need in that day. If you just come in and choose an affirmation, it may be that you're battling with an identity crisis, or you're battling with just overwhelm, or you're battling with anxiety, or you're battling with just getting something done, or in a relationship issue, or whatever it may be. Just believing in yourself, that kind of thing. Just taking a bunch of really good quotes and statements and things like that and just saying them over and over again is not resolving anything, as I've mentioned. It's not going to fix anything. It's not what you need, actually. It's just going to help you to a certain extent. You're going to grow those little things in your networks, and they will be helpful. I'm not saying that they're not going to be helpful, but a true active reach grows out of the work that comes before, and it's what you need in that moment, in that day, to help you get through the day. Because the work you've done of the previous 4 steps shifts your mind, brain, body network and taps into the unconscious wisdom part of you and finds what it is that you need that day. So sometimes finding an active reach, you really think about, you really got to think about it. You really got to tune in and do that work. And then you'll find that That's something that is going to anchor you through the day. So what does it look like? What is an active reach? What is it? Now it can be a statement. It can be a statement that could be your favorite quote. It could be an affirmation. It could be just a phrase that you create. It's something that you basically will say to yourself. So that's why I like to put that in the active reach reminders. You put that in your reminder and set it to go off at least 7 times a day. Now, when you are saying this active reach to yourself or reading it when it pops up, and maybe you just read it in passing, maybe you read it out loud, maybe it's a combination of those, maybe you read it and you think a little bit more about it, maybe you even go into your phone and add a little bit to your active reach to expand it a little bit, or make some notes, or you find yourself thinking, that you've given it some time and attention when it pops up, and that is making it stronger. So it's it's progressing you forward. It's actually helping you to move towards the new reconceptualized way of thinking, because in the Neurocycle, you're embracing, processing, and reconceptualizing. You're deconstructing and reconstructing. And the active reach that every single day is moving you in that direction. It's helping to grow and stabilize and automatize that thought. So doing it 7 times a day at least keeps it into the conscious, makes you consciously aware of it. And that statement, you'll talk in more details and I'm going to give you examples, but it keeps you consciously aware. And if you are consciously aware of something, at least 7 times a day, when you deliberately and intentionally read something, focus on it, speak it out loud. Same thing, 7 times a day, you are making it bigger. You're giving it more energy. You're putting like wave and on top of a wave and making it more impactful. You are helping yourself prepare for the next day. What's also fantastic about the active reach is not only is it doing all those things where it's helping move you forward and progress and stabilize the thought and those things, but it is also a way of helping to, and I keep saying the word anchor, but helping you in those ruminating thoughts like I was describing, when you go and make the coffee and you do look out the window and all that stuff, and you find your mind going back to the negative thing that or the toxic thought, and you might find yourself, going down a bit of a rabbit hole. Catch yourself, acknowledge the little rabbit hole. Okay, I'm thinking about that again. I went down that route. Maybe you make a note so you acknowledge and don't deny what you were thinking about. If you see it was what you thought about 5 minutes before, and 5 minutes before that, and 5 minutes before that, and what you actually thought about when you did the Neurocycle, let's say you're doing it in the morning, and you actually see that you seen that whatever the problem was, and you'd actually given yourself the little active reach for the day, and you find yourself going back to that spot literally before the recheck where you kind of regressed. So in other words, in the rumination, if you find yourself going back to where you left off this morning and then even further back, then you need to stop and catch yourself, because you're kind of unwinding the work that you've done. So you don't want to unwind the work that you've done. You want to keep it wound up. And so it helps to anchor you back. It's okay, I'm not going to think about that now. This is where I ended off. This active reach is keeping me moving forward. Tomorrow, when I dive into the Neurocycle again, I can deal with those things. So I've acknowledged them, I've written them down, I've made a note in my phone or whatever, that tomorrow when I do my Neurocycle, I'll bring those aspects up so that I don't feel like I'm ignoring it and suppressing it. Because if you suppress something, it's going to be volcanic in nature. It's going to kind of slow down the process. So that's what the active reach is going to help you do. It's going to help you come back and keep you on target to move forward instead of getting stuck and going backwards. So it's progressive. It's progressing you forward. So it's a practicing, it's an applying of what you've done during the course of the day. Doesn't work on its well on its own, as I explained. If we try and fly a plane land a plane, but you haven't even taken off, it's going to happen. Okay. So as you know, the Neurocycle, I use that plane analogy quite a bit, where you prepare the plane, it takes off, flies and lands, and the preparing and the taking off is to gather awareness, and then the reflect and the metacogging recheck are the flying, and the active reach is the landing of the plane. So each day you want to go through that cycle and you want to land your plane. And when you land your plane, that's your chance of also resting. So an active reach is also kind of like a resting phase where you are doing work, but you're not doing that, you're doing the work. It's a joyful, progressive, forward-moving, stabilizing type work versus a deconstructing and reconstructing, which is really hard work. So that the active reach, therefore, is giving you a sense of relief and a sense of peace and a sense of, I could just hang on to this and I'll be okay, and tomorrow I'll pick up. The mistake that a lot of my patients made, that I've made, that a lot of the millions now from this platform have made, and people send me emails and comments and so on that I know this happened, is that you think, oh gosh, okay, I can do more than what I can do in a day. And you think, well, I got so far today, so let me just, then you follow where this active reach is going and negative rumination, let me work some more. But that can make you tired. It's better to keep to around 15 minutes a day. And on the odd day, maybe you go to 30 to 45 minutes, especially when you start at the beginning of each neurocycle. You may spend longer at the beginning just to get yourself going and, get the thought identified and named and that sort of thing. But you don't want to do too much. It's so draining. Your brain and conscious mind will get really, really tired. And then it flows into the rest of the day. And you feel tired when you're tired than what you maybe should feel, or you start feeling more negative when, about things just because you're in that exhausted state. So the active reach is also there to prevent that from happening, to prevent you from overtaxing the emotional side of what you're doing. Okay. And then, so a couple of other things. The active reach is like a summary of the day's work. It's like a full stop that you can do to help you gain mental peace and progress forward to empowerment through the day. It helps us, the active reach also helps us find ways to navigate through the day. So if you're having a bad day, the active reach is a wonderful thing to fall back on. So you don't have to only do it 7 times a day. You can do it as many times as a day as you would like. Some days you may do it way more than other days, but it's good to do at least 7, because it's those 7 conscious points that will then help to anchor it and keep it more stabilized and start doing all the things that I've been describing. Okay, so, and I'm looking down just because I don't want to miss anything out. Okay, so it's an action step to anchor you. It happens throughout the day. And it's when you practice it 7 times a day, the more you practice it, the more it just pops up into your brain and it guides you. Now, the active reach, what people often ask me is, should you do the same active reach for all 63 days? Some people do. It's so different for each person. And maybe that does work for you. Maybe you do one for the first 21 days and you have another one for the next 42 days. Maybe you make a new one every 21 days. Maybe you make a new one every single day. Maybe you have one base one and you keep adding to that each day. Maybe you do completely different ones each day. Maybe you do one every week. So you make one every 7 days. It's so different for every person, and it's so different for every situation. It's so different for every person who is doing this, because you've each got your own unique way of working. Okay. So what is when you're doing the active reach, it's helping you not to hold on to that toxic thought. So that's another thing it does, is it releases you, it's one more severing of that toxic part of your tree, that is the thought tree, that is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Because eventually that past story will shrink and get really small, and the healthy one will get nice and big and healthy and take over the unhealthy one, the unhealthy part, because you're healing the root. And the active reach is helping in that direction as well. So it's kind of like the Kintsugi principle. When you do an active reach, and what I've got over here to explain that is, I've got a little Kintsugi vase, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but you can see the little gold over here, and there's like a little crack over there. So this is the Kintsugi principle it's like an art principle, that when something breaks, they don't throw it away. They gather all the pieces together and then they stick it back together with glue, with gold lacquer. So what you have is this, what supposedly is an imperfect vase, but it's actually perfect, because that's what we like, with all these cracks and things in it. Such a great analogy. And so the active reach is kind of solidifying that. Your active reach is reminding you that, this is you're healing, and that's all part of your character development, and you don't have to feel bad about that in your life. That this is actually beautiful, because you've grown forward. You put back together, and these are the little marks, the parts of your story that have now shrunken and gone and are not controlling you anymore, and have been turned around. You've reconceptualized them. So the active reach is helping us to get into this kind of Kintsugi state. So let's have a look at just what you can do, just in terms of understanding the structure. It can be, as I said, an affirmation, a little prayer. It could be a statement. It could be a quote that you love. It could be something you make up. But it's, once again, any of those, they need to grow out of the previous 4 steps. If you just come in and do it, as I keep saying, it's not going to work. But so sometimes you're as you go through the 4 steps, a quote is some quote that's beautiful. that works, or there is an affirmation that you want to say to yourself, but it's the right one because you've gone through the previous steps. Okay. So I do encourage you to try and get 2 parts to your active reach. And that the first part is to get a self-encouraging type statement that invokes kindness and patience and gratitude to yourself for the work that you've done. Very important, because that will shift your neurophysiology, shift your mindset, shift your expectation. It helps your heart to release hormones. It'll help you to have more peace. You'll increase your theta wave in your brain, which is the healing and sense sort of healing. It's basically a healing wave that's moving through your body, which is really great. It helps with the immune system function. It helps to reduce stress. So getting this self-encouraging, kind, patient, gratitude type mindset is really important. Also, your heart generates an electromagnetic field. And when you are in kindness and gratitude to yourself by saying these statements, you generate this field that works with it basically matches with the theta wave and the balance of waves energy, which is energy. The theta wave is the frequency of the brain energy. It's one of the frequencies, and that particular frequency has been very associated with when you are in gratitude and a sense of peace and a sense of calmness and especially self-kindness. And that's what the active reach will help to do. And then the other part is, so it's to get a nice statement. And then that's the first part. And for example, things like, I can do this. I'm going to give you a bunch of examples in a moment. And then the second part is, what can I do today to practice what I've learned from steps 1 through 4 to help me cope? So that's to find, let me say that again. It's a self-encouraging statement. You want to always have the kindness element. Then you can ask yourself, what can you do from the previous 4 steps? What from those 4 steps can you do today that's really going to encapsulate what you've done today and help you move forward? Now, you ask yourself that kind of question. What can I do today? This is to help you generate the active reach, to practice what I've learned from steps 1 through 4 to help me cope today, to help me practice today, to help me learn, to help me anchor. And remember, it's kind gratitude, like I said in the first part. And so, what can you do? So self-encouraging statement, then what could you do? And then you could also, that second part, the doing, could also be, you could also do a visualization. So let me give you an example. Maybe the self-encouraging statement part could be something like, I can do this. And listen to the tone of my voice. Listen to how it's changing. I can do this. Even smile at yourself. Even practice saying it in front of a mirror. I can do this. Nice, gentle voice. And then maybe your little, what can you do today? So that's what you're saying today is, I can do this. Can you don't always have to, but can you pair this with doing something? Like maybe as you say, I can do this, what you could do is you could smile at yourself. You could give yourself a high five. You could tap on the floor. So you associate some kind of little movement with the statement. And you can visualize something. So you could visualize a beautiful pink rose. I'm obsessed with pink, as you probably know by now. Normally I'm always wearing pink. I've got pink nails, okay, tonight. So you could, I can do this. Maybe it's a smile and you remember yourself smiling. And maybe you imagine this beautiful, close your eyes and just see that beautiful bouquet of pink roses. And so as you're going through the day, now you move out of the Neurocycle, you're in your work, you're doing whatever, you're in a meeting, and you find yourself, something triggers you, and whatever you're working on, maybe a self-esteem thing, or you're worried about something not being completed or finished, and that thought comes rushing up and you're working on that. So immediately you can say, I can do this in your mind. If you can say it out loud, great. But if you're in the presence of other people, you could just literally be looking forward. I can do this. Smile. Remember the smile. Just put a little smile on your face and imagine the roses. It's going to take you a couple of seconds. I can do this and imagine the roses. So that combination, as you use that during the day, it's doing all those anchoring, moving you forward, practicing, etc., etc. And now tomorrow it might change into something else. So let me give you another example for a statement. I'm just going to go through a bunch of them and just give you a statement. Remember the kindness, gratitude, a statement that encourages you. Here's another one. This anger is not who I am. I'm just dealing with a habit I set up in my mind to cope. and I'm doing something about it. So that's a little bit longer than the other one. It doesn't matter how long they are. You don't want to make them too long. So then it's a lot to say. So I wouldn't really go too long, but this is a good length. So this is an example. Maybe you're working on anger. And so in kindness to yourself, this anger is not who I am. I'm just dealing with a habit I set up in my mind to cope. I'm doing something about it. And maybe, look what I'm doing. I'm putting my hands together. I'm doing something about it. That could be your movement. Or it could be, you imagine, your visualization could be maybe something like you running along the beach. I'm just making up stuff as I'm going along. Or you just have the statement. So kindness to yourself, gratitude, gentleness. That's how you shroud this thing. A statement that is kind and great, and showing that kindness and gratitude. Pair it with a little action, something simple, like a smile, a high five. Imagine yourself running along the beach. Well, that's visualization. And then the third thing is you can pair it with a visualization, running along the beach, a white rose, taking your hands, all that kind of thing. So a statement, an action, and a visualization. You don't have to have all three. You can have all three. You can have one. You can have two. You can have three.